Welcome back to the Old Warlock. I'm Alex.
I'm Jim.
And today we're going to be talking about a topic that, hopefully a lot of you guys are fans of. We over here at the Old Warlock are big fans of the manuals that go with the first edition of the game of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And today we're going to talk about one of our favorites that we think flies under the radar a lot of having some importance and some cool stuff in it. And that is the Manual of the Planes. So we're going to get into all kinds of detail talking about some of our favorite things out of here. So let's get started. So the Manual of the Planes, this 1987 book written by none other than Jeff Grubb, deals entirely with different planes of existence that you can go through and have your characters go through and experience in AD&D, which, to be honest, is not something that we have tons of experience with doing.
It's something that we've never, at least in my campaign, I've never put much emphasis on it. I've used the ethereal plane in a lot of different instances, but all of the other planes, and there are many, as you probably know, we've just never gotten into having that much in the way of adventures there. But recently, with almost like a rediscovery of the book on our part, we've started to come up with some more ideas for how we would like to integrate the planes into at least my campaign. I think you're working on the same thing in yours.
Yeah. We have experienced some of the elemental planes playing in some other campaigns and things like that in the past, but in more of an official capacity with using this book, it has been very limited. I received this last year. This is the last book to complete my collection of the original manuals, and I was very happy about it. So reading through it, it was kind of a pleasant discovery. It's one of the, lesser talked about books, but it had a lot of really cool things in it. And I just kind of like to talk about some of it. The things that I want to incorporate.
Well, and I think that you're right that it's one of those books advanced D&D books from first edition. It's really one of the ones that I believe has been forgotten and fallen under the radar. I mean, a lot of people there are a lot of planes adventures out there that it's continuing all the way to the current day. But back when this came out in '87, we had kind of stopped buying a lot of the original manuals. We went up through, probably 1985, and then they kept on coming out with new things. We always considered them to just be something to raise funds, to raise revenue for TSR. And I think that was partially true.
With a lot of them, yes. I think that's very much the case.
But at the same time, I think we underestimated this book, and I don't think we gave it its just desserts. And we just never looked that far into it.
Absolutely. And before we get started, I would also like to say that I'm sure that a lot of you watching right now probably know more about the contents of this book and how they are used than we do, because we're pretty new to it. So don't judge us too harshly. We just want to talk about the things that we think are cool.
Or judge us harshly and tell us interesting things.
And tell us how we're wrong.
Because this is a learning experience for us right now that we're going through with adding the planes concepts into our campaigns.
It really is. And just to start, one of the things that's kind of a constant throughout this book are these diagrams of how the planes are actually structured and their relationships to each other in, existence, I guess, in the multiverse, I think is the term. There's several of these throughout the book that kind of lay it out and describe it so you can envision it in your mind. But it's kind of a detail that makes something that's this complicated to begin with a little bit more understandable, which is definitely a difference from some of the other books released around the same time.
Right.
Which I'm a big fan. This here particularly is talking about the ethereal plane, which is probably where we have some of the most experience talking about things. So big fan of that.
And one of the things that I really liked about this, when we first started kind of, again, taking another look, re-looking at this particular book. I love this bit here, the way they have it divided up, as Alexander was saying. One of the things that I really like is
back to where I was.
Back to where you were. I really like the idea of the listing of the creatures that you can find in each particular planes. Especially, you start off here with the ethereal plane, gives you a listing of all of the things that you're going to be finding there. This is great stuff. It really synthesizes things down to a manageable level. As Alexander was saying, this can be really complicated, but this book does a pretty darn good job of taking some of that complication out.
Yeah, and especially because it's basically just monster encounters like you would find in the other manuals, but specific to those monsters that maybe if you haven't played the game a ton, you look through the Fiend Folio and you have no idea where you would find this necessarily in your game or where you would place it. It's found in a lot of these.
Right.
So there's whole new monsters and new worlds that have been created specifically for this, which I think is really cool because it's just a new level of creativity that you can kind of send characters into and do things with. So you've got all kinds of different things from the ethereal plane, like we said, to the elemental planes. But then these were some of the things that I thought were really interesting, is these notions of energy planes and quasi-elemental planes, which are kind of complicated. I don't fully understand exactly what they are, but reading through it, I think it's an interesting addition where you have things that are very similar to the prime material plane, which is kind of the outer planes that I'll talk about here in a little while, but also including things like quasi-elemental planes and energy planes with positive and negative energy that just kind of add to the lore, I think, of the D&D multiverse that's been created, which I really like. It's kind of, this book is almost, to me, it's almost the laws of physics for why the things in Dungeons & Dragons operate the way that they do. Where different things come from, where they take their energy from, who controls what, where, what god or devil controls what. And it's things like this that you wouldn't necessarily ever send your players into to do anything in. But they still exist out there somewhere, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah. Moving on from there, the Astral Plane, of course, critically important for a lot of magic items, things like that, that I'm just a big fan of because it's a different way of kind of looking at how players can interact with the world, what the world looks like, and what their experiences are going to be.
Well, I think it also gives you a lot of different options for creating different types of adventures.
Exactly.
I think it opens up a whole new door. Using things, going deeper into the planes concepts, I think it opens the door for a lot of other unique, but I think primarily the word that springs to mind with me is different methods for creating adventures.
Yeah.
And if you take elements of the planes, and this is not something that I would do on a regular basis. This would be something that I might weave in occasionally to my existing campaign. But to me, it just adds another element of there's another element that the players can explore. There's another element that, as a DM, I can explore, and I can have things that can be creative in a different way from what I'm normally used to. So to me, that's one of the cool things, is it offers up a lot of creative options that if you focus primarily on the prime material plane, you don't get that.
Yeah, you can build as many castles as you want, but then when you insert your players into a completely new environment, it's almost... you can have sort of a fear of the unknown where they have to really think on their feet and get into the role-playing aspect of things to work their way out of whatever new situation they find themselves in.
Well, and one of the things that I'd like to do, and we've talked about it before, I think we talked about it on the podcast, was using the planes to be extra-dimensional, to be extra-dimensional spaces. Yeah. And so we've already had those kinds of things in there over the years, but this is allowing us, re-examining this is allowing us to expand on that whole concept. So
so it's allowing for the diversification, I would say, of our world and how they work. But personally, the first half of this book is awesome, and it's got a lot of cool stuff with the astral and ethereal and elemental planes and things like that. But where I really started to like this book was here, where it starts to talk about the outer planes towards the end of the book. And essentially, the outer planes are representative of different aspects of alignment from what I can glean from everything. So you have things like Nirvana, which is a lawful neutral alignment, which is very critically important. Well, law is the single most important thing there. You've got Arcadia, which is talking about neutral good with a lawful swing, all kinds of different good.
Lawful flavor.
Exactly, yeah, all kinds of different good outer planes. But then you also get into things like the Abyss, into Pandemonium, into Tartarus, which are, evil, focusing on chaotic versus lawful evil. And there's a lot of lore built up in them with their relationships to each other and things like that. So I think it's a really cool aspect of the game where, again, your players probably aren't going to find themselves in the layers of hell, but if they do, it's, you know, it's all written down here for you, and you've got some cool ideas that you can build off of for especially extra powerful characters, most likely.
Yeah.
If your characters have outgrown the prime material plane, we don't necessarily play this way, but if you do the thing where you go up through level 15 or 20 or whatever else, this kind of opens up new
challenges. New challenges.
Yeah. This is a whole new world that your players are going to have to interact with, and it's just that next step of power if you have your players go that far.
Well, and one of the things that I've never really shied away from, the times that I have used journeys to these planes, sometimes it's been with characters that are 3rd or 4th level. And that is actually a lot of fun because there is so much preparation that a character that is shall I say, underpowered, there's a lot of preparation that character has to go through in order to make that quick in and out journey to one of these planes.
Yeah.
There are a number of adventures in themselves just in getting the character prepared to go and do this if that's something that they choose to go and do.
Yeah, getting magic and whatever else they might need, trying to think ahead and plan their way around things. But I think that overall, my absolute favorite part of this is I think this is one of the best written books out of all of the different manuals. Really? Yeah, and I would like to read one of my favorite portions in any of the manuals that I just think is really, really cool. And it's talking about Avernus, which is the bottommost layer of hell where Asmodeus lives.
There we go.
There was one conduit rumored to exist in the heart of Asmodeus's mighty palace. It allegedly was there long before the current overlord or any overlord before him first set foot in the hells. This conduit is said to destroy all evil that touches it, even the mightiest archdevil or demon prince. Where it leads is unknown, but it is the foundation for stories that say that the best method of escaping the hells is to journey to its lowest layer.
Wow.
And that by itself, it's a cool idea for a story. It's not necessarily a firm construction of this is exactly what the universe or the multiverse contains and everything in it. But it is saying, here's a loose set of guidelines and rules. And if you never want to incorporate that into the campaign that you're running, that's fine. But it's still a cool idea for if you have these crazy powerful characters who end up somehow in the layers of hell or whatever else. This is an option for something that you can send them to go and do.
And I really like the fact that it is vague.
Yeah.
I prefer that in all of the manuals because the more rules heavy you get, the further away I am from actually being likely to include it. We talked the other day about some of the things from Raging Swan Press. The reason I like Raging Swan Press so much is because he gives just enough detail in the things that he creates for you to have an idea of what's happening, but the creative side, the detailed side, is left up to the people who are actually engaging and using those things. And I think that that's very apparent in the way that the Manual of the Planes is laid out. There are details in here.
Absolutely.
There are some very specific details,
yes.
But there are also some real hints at things that I think even as late as 1987, they were trying to say, yeah, here's a hint, but you're going to have to make this your own if you want to move forward with it. And that's something that I really like.
There are specifics with rules and things like that, and like the actual nature of some of the planes. But in terms of storyline, a lot of it is left very vague, so you can create things of yourself. I mean, my world, which is, you know, in its early stages of development, does have this incorporated into it in some way. And I've taken this as inspiration, and I've created it into something new that likely, again, no one will ever experience. I really doubt if that'll take place. But it's still an option there, and if nothing else, it's a cool bit of story writing that I was able to do to build off of something that they gave me and create my own thing, which I really like.
Yeah, you're right, but it's very good. That is good.
Yeah. So overall, that's kind of just the gist of the Manual of the Planes. It's not necessarily something that we think that you'll end up using a ton in your D&D campaign. It's not, you know, a player's handbook or the first monster manual or anything like that. But of the more supplementary works that were released later, this is definitely one of our favorites, just because of the new options that it allows you to explore.
And I don't know if this is available on Drive-Thru-RPG as a PDF or as a print-on-demand. I really don't know. But if you're interested in getting a hold of a copy of the Manual of the Planes, I can tell you right now they're very difficult to find.
They are.
We both have a copy of our own, but finding them on eBay is not an easy thing to do. At least finding a good copy is not easy.
Finding a good copy that's not outrageously overpriced is difficult.
They may be available on Drive-Thru-RPG as a PDF or as a print-on-demand book. But I think it's a book that if you're looking to if you're heavily into OSR, if you're heavily into the advanced Dungeons and Dragons concepts,
you need that next step. This
is something that you may want to look into and possibly add to your collection.
Yeah, so we're big fans. that's really all we've got. We just want to talk about this a little bit.
That's it.
So check the description down below for all of our social media, our Spreadshirt store, all those kinds of good things. Check out our website and check out our podcast. All the links, again, should be down in the description or in the About section of the channel homepage. So yeah.
I think that's all I've got.
Thanks for watching. I'm Alex.
I'm Jim. Keep it short on free.
Bye-bye.